on the ODOT website. So I got on there, and that's the unclaimed track that I have been able to find on just the, and I've got about 7 or 8 maps. With the Lakeshore Limited line, I went from everything that was just a little bit wet from the east side line of Lorain County all the way over to the Indiana line and from Findlay north to the Michigan line. So I've got maps, and everything that you see that's in pink is an abandoned rail line. The other ones are shows the ownership of who owns which rail line. Marcy was suggesting that maybe we go work around to use these abandoned rail lines. Now, I had two questions for the group here to see if somebody knows. Who are the owners of record on these abandoned rail lines? And what's the process toward acquiring that land or those rail lines? So, does anybody have any answers to that?
Immacovered.
Yeah, hey Glenn, this is Roger.
Yeah, Roger.
Yeah, a lot of those that you're showing, the rails have been removed. A lot of them are rails to trails, so they're now owned by like Metro Parks or whatever. They're actually there are bike and pedestrian trails in some of those.
Oh, okay.
So not all of those still have uh, actual track. A lot of
Okay.
them, the track has been removed on the that particular layer I'm familiar with from working with Tim's, and the inactive layer um, often shows uh, rail corridors and right of way that is no longer owned by railroads. So they
Oh,
might still own some of those corridors. Some of them might still have track. Some of them might still be owned by the freight rails, but some of them have probably changed hands and are owned by others that have been converted to rails to trails, or sometimes it can converts to private property if the tracks have been removed and the freight rail no longer has a use for the corridor. Sometimes it goes back to the hands of the local property owners. So it's really corridor by corridor that you have to check to see what's actually there and what's not there.
oh, okay. All
So
right.
I think what Tim's does and ODOT is they just have historic records of where there were tracks at one time. So that layer is just going to show all of those previous track right of ways, but I don't think in the data itself it tells you what's there currently.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Roger. That's very informative.
Glenn, really quick.
Yes,
Can I ask a question for Roger real quick?
sure.
Roger, I was just curious because you mentioned specifically the metro parks at the beginning of that, but then kind of went in to how
Yes.
others could be returned to private property. There's a lot of different. Do you think that process and kind of these unused tracks being either returned or turned into something else or sold, do you think that that's more likely and going to be more concentrated in the direct Toledo area, like with the metro parks, or kind of throughout the rest of what would be like the Lakeshore line? Do you think that that process of them getting returned is probably consistently happening across all of the lines, or is it more central to kind of those metropolitan areas?
I think the metropolitan areas you're more likely to see the rails to trails. Like in Toledo, we have the Wabash trails, which was shown on Glenn's map. They kind of going west and southwest from Toledo. And then there's the Chessie Circle Trail, which used to be the West Side Corridor, used to be the old uh,
Toledo Terminal.
what was that, Tom? There you go,
Toledo
Toledo
Terminal.
Terminal. Yeah, so that right of way was transferred from CSX to actually to TMACOG for a very short time, and then was transferred to the Metro Parks and the University of Toledo and the City of Toledo for bike trails. The rural areas, it's a slower process. There are some cross Ohio bike ped trails. There's the North Coast Inland Trail, which kind of goes from Toledo east to Elmore. If you've been to Elmore, there's the path that goes across the river on the old rail bridge. all the way to Fremont and past. That is just kind of piece by piece because it's more difficult in those areas. Other areas, such as in the Huron, Ohio, between Huron, Ohio and Milan, Ohio, along the Huron River, there are areas there where they wanted to build a bike ped connection between those two villages, but some of the land had converted, going back to like 100-year-old law that they found on the books, that when the railroads um, actually abandoned some of that right of way, that it can go back to the original, being part of the original land. So there's some landowners there that blocked the trail, saying that they own the land and put fences up. So some of it does, you have these 100-year-old laws on the books that says, when that is abandoned, becomes private property again. So it really varies across the state. But
I,
yeah, I would say generally in urban areas, you're going to find those corridors becoming more bike and pedestrian paths because that's more popular in the urban areas than it is in the rural areas.
and I know that this is a total guesstimation, off the top of your head. Would you have any guess of how many of those kind of like unused or abandoned rail lines would be even still in existence or be available to be turned into something like this?
Yeah, I'm not right offhand.
Okay.
Like I said, it's probably, line by line you'd have to look at to see is there still rail there? I don't think ODOT has that details on those abandoned lines as they do on the active lines where they know who owns it and how many trains and so forth. But the abandoned ones, there's not a lot of information. Some of them are recently abandoned. Um, like the Toledo terminal. It's not really been that long that it's been changed. And then there are some that the tracks have been gone for decades.
So Roger, would we talk to um, whatever county that line is in to get the answer as to whether or not it's an abandoned line, or who
Uh,
would we talk to?
probably your best bet is to um, go to like with Lucas County, you can look at the property by parcel. So you find the line that you're looking at. First thing you want to do is like look at Google Maps. Is there still rail there? You can zoom in pretty close. And then you can look at like the property's parcel ownership. Like for Lucas County, that's easily available. And you can actually see who actually owns those parcels. Is it still owned by the railroad? Is it owned by, a park? So that'd be your first step, is to find out what line you're looking at to try to get that detail, who actually owns those parcels.
Okay.
Roger, this is Frank. Does this include interurban lines?
Oh, the old interurban line? Yeah, it would be the same because parts of it have been abandoned. I think going southwest, like from Grand Rapids. I know that line doesn't exist anymore. So yeah, it would include any of the old rail lines.
Yeah, the interurban line, um, I can still see it when I hired out in '69, and it paralleled the lakeshore line from Buffalo all the way to Chicago.
Well, there was a series of not just, there wasn't one interurban line.
Yeah, it wasn't just one, it
They're
was
all
a
over the place.
series. But you could basically get on in Buffalo and with one or two transfers make it to Toledo, and with a couple more transfers make it all the way to Chicago.
And I think they also sometimes, Tom, went through middle of streets or highways.
Yeah.
Sean, you had a question?
No, I was just going to follow up on information Roger shared that usually in counties they have planning and zoning departments or in the property appraiser, they can give you that property information for per parcels. Sometimes there may be a fee, sometimes there may not, depends on the county. But that's usually the best way to find information for parcels of land.
Okay.